All right, we're going to try this again. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Spherical Luminosity's YouTube Live. Thank you all for joining us. And look at all you lovely people who are here. Thank you for coming. So we have, if you wouldn't mind just letting us know your first name and where you're joining us from, that would be awesome so I can say hello to you. We have the Lawrence's, Michael and Mary from Denver, Colorado, and John DeMoss. I'm not sure where you're from, John, but hello. And Rose Goldflame. Ooh, I kind of like that. Rose Gold Flame. So there's Ting coming in from Ottawa and Canada, and Betsy and Todd. Hi, Betsy and Todd from Crescent City, California. Colleen from Valley Center, California. And wow, we have people joining us from Brazil, Mauricio, and Marty from Julesburg, Colorado, and a whole bunch more of you who are coming on. And Nanette Lowe, once again, coming from Denmark. Our European crew coming online. And Elaine from Kauai, aloha from the Hawaiian Isles. All right, so I'm going to get started. Thank you for all of you who are joining, and wonderful to see you all, even if I didn't get to say hello to you personally. So my name is Karen Cheong. Many of you know me already, and some of you don't. So for those of you who are new, I help to catalyze awakening and a rise in human consciousness by releasing people's blocks at what I refer to as frequency level, amplifying your awareness of the divine within so you can recognize and live the abundance and limitlessness of your true nature as infinite, indestructible consciousness. This is your birthright, and the time for humanity to awaken to this possibility is now. So, for those of you who are brand new to frequency work and don't know much about it, I can only give a brief overview in the amount of time I have. So, after this, if you want to learn more, I'd recommend checking out episodes 1, 2, and 131 of my podcast, Mastering Your World Through Frequencies, which you can find on this very same channel. And if you guys could hit the like button, if you guys enjoy this particular live stream, that really helps us a lot. And if you subscribe or share it with your friends, that also helps us. So, in any case, the first two episodes, 1 and 2, are all about the fundamentals of frequency work. And in episode 131, we discuss the top 18 questions we get here at Spherical Luminosity. And additionally, there's the How It Works section of the website, sphericalluminosity.com. So, today, we're talking about what to expect in 2023 and how to prepare for it. All right, so this is actually a bigger topic than it seems, to be honest. Currently, the world continues to experience polarity and turmoil in different degrees in different places. So this is a very high-level overview. What I hear from others, what my take on things is, and as many of you know who do read the news, some of you don't, and that's fine. But there's a huge amount of oppression in or by China, Iran, Turkey, North Korea, Russia, places in the Middle East, and that's just the short list. We're seeing it pretty much everywhere to a lesser or greater degree. And on a good note, we're seeing protests rising up in the face of the oppression, like we saw that happening in China in numbers that we haven't seen in a long time. We saw it in the protests in Iran, but they're being countered generally with an even more intense oppression, such as I think Iran has 10,000 people they have on sentenced to death for participating in the protests. So again, it's not just abroad in some crazy countries where we kind of, unfortunately or sadly, are sort of expecting oppression to be present. It's happening here in the US, where we're seeing continued polarization, rising crime in many of the cities, a rise in white supremacy at an extraordinary rate, a trend towards banning books, the whole debate on abortion, which is really about oppression of women framed within a religious and political context, etc. Okay, so I've also heard something about banning content in classrooms that addresses the history of slavery and the like. So, my feeling is, and now that's the condition of the world now. All right. So it's kind of depending on how you look at the world, it can feel a little overwhelming and like there's really no hope. So, what is to come in 2023? Well, it depends on your perspective. And for most people, what I would say, depending on your frequency resonance, there'll be a continuation of feeling more squeezed with more power and oppression like more abuse of power is what I should say, not just power, abuse of power and oppression going on to support some agenda that is faceless. That's the odd thing that's happening now, right? So before, I don't know, like, I was a kid who, was born and raised in the 70s and 80s. Like people would claim, like they would take account, take responsibility for whatever action, but it's weird. It's kind of faceless now. These different agendas, these different groups, and which has the potential to make us feel more disempowered because you don't know like where it's coming from. So there will be likely more corruption and abuse of power that becomes visible, sort of like what we've just seen in Qatar, uh, which happened with the bribing of the EU officials to host the recent World Cup. That scandal's sort of come to light, right? So there'll be probably more blame, more media being used simply as sensationalist agenda meant to create more fear and more instability. Okay, so why? Well, because if there's more fear, more instability, well, it sells and it makes it easier to exert control, quite frankly. Because fear, as many of you know, drops your frequency resonance. So the more fearful you are, the harder it is to come into the 0 point, the less empowered you feel, the more off center you feel, the less able you are to co create your reality, the less able you are to enter higher resonating opportunities, experiences, timelines. It also makes it harder for you to positively impact others because you're in fear. So it's an interesting way to control people. So we're likely to see more starkness in our abuse of the earth. Okay, so um, and this has been happening for a while. Okay, so it's not like any of these things. Like if you notice how you are as I'm talking about these things, this has been present for a long time, right? Honestly, I'm not saying anything that's like particularly not been happening, right? It's been happening. It's about how visible it's becoming. So notice how you are in your 0 point. Notice if you're having fear show up. Just notice how you're responding to this. Yes. So, so in our abuse of the earth, I mean, it's dark. All right. There's overconsumption, overfishing, excessive landfill, water shortages, drought, flooding. And if you notice, the weather has gotten more intense and crisis like. I mean, we just had our own little, very soft, very Hawaiian eruption of our volcano. But there is an earthquake that happened in California. Earthquakes are going off in Mexico. There's a massive storm coming in through the Midwest, if I'm understanding correctly. There's a cold front coming through Texas. So there's a lot of sort of more intense weather patterns happening, and there's going to be more. Okay, when you abuse something, intensity rises, right? So we've abused our relationship with the earth, and so there will also, for those of you who are aware of these types of things, there are going to be more people transitioning, or said differently, dying. Okay, so unexpectedly, suddenly, at a young age, weird accidents, et cetera, transitioning from embodiment. So please know, okay, so before everyone freaks out, please know this is agreed upon. Right? This is a time where there is tremendous momentum. There's a shift between consciousness levels. And for some beings, they chose to transition in this time of momentum, to transition into a higher consciousness. They just don't happen to be in bodies when they're doing it. Okay. So know also that death is a very sacred passage. It is something that is agreed upon between the being and pure source. Okay, there's nothing really else that has can shift that. Okay, even if the death looks horrifying and is clearly caused by something or an external force, it's still agreed upon by the being. Okay, and the divine. It's a very sacred passage. So my sense is that many cities will deteriorate or decay further. Okay, we're seeing this already, kind of like Gotham in the Batman series. This like once prosperous cities that are being overrun by homelessness, opiate use, crime, and just dirtiness. Okay, while a small handful seem to be actually heading in the opposite direction. Cities like Nashville, Tennessee, or Austin, San Miguel de Allende in Mexico, certainly others as well. It's not an exhaustive list. But it's interesting because even the city that Chris and I lived in for almost 20 years, which is San Francisco, is really decaying. It's kind of the city we left and the city it is now is very different. So a lot of things that when they're all combined can make it seem like humanity is unsavable and like we're heading towards disaster. Okay, it can feel like we're more and more disempowered and things are more hopeless. Okay, so as I mentioned, Be aware of how you are, if you felt yourself contracting or if the seed of fear is growing. Many of you are okay and you're in your centers and you're in in your stability, which is great. And some of you aren't. So just notice how you are with all this. Okay. So why is all this happening? All right. So some of you have heard me say this before. So one reason is to force people to wake up, or at least to bring things to the point that's almost impossible to ignore the intensity of the polarization. So the external world is a mirror for like your internal state. Your physical reality mirrors how you are on spirit level. Okay, so for people who are asleep, who aren't really aware, who think of everything in from the perspective of the little s self, the ego mind, okay, because that's all they have, they are living in extreme duality. And to perpetuate that illusion, which is just that, it's an illusion to catalyze a desire to awaken in people who have been asleep. You have to really sometimes get people out of comfort into anger, frustration, irritation, discomfort, whatever it is for them to wake up. A lot of you in your own journey to awakening, it began with a breakdown because sometimes that's what it takes, right? To wake us up out of our sleep. So I'm not saying it's delightful, okay, to be in the breakdown. And oftentimes it's necessary. It isn't always necessary, it's not required, but often that's the journey. Yes. So for those who are focused on awakening or their spiritual journey, this time is about shifting your focus inwards rather than relying on the external world for stability and groundedness because it's an illusion, right? So really to learn to become aware of, accept, and eventually embrace yourself fully, to continue to focus on raising your frequency resonance, to expand your ability to view the world and your life from the perspective of what I refer to as the big S self, that aspect of yourself that is aware of yourself as infinite, indestructible consciousness, limitless and fully abundant, intrinsically part and inherently connected to the one. There is beauty everywhere. It depends on your perspective and what you're allowing yourself to see. So, this is about heightening your own accountability so that you can recognize how much authority you have to create your own reality. Sometimes, like I said, you need breakdown in order to get to the surrender point required to understand your authority and your power as co creator, right? To take a different path. So you start to live a different, higher level reality despite what others are living around you. Okay. So the next question, which is much more like to me as opposed to thinking of all the chaos, okay, which is there, how do you prepare for what is coming? Because I think that is actually a more constructive question. Okay, once you become aware of and you come into acceptance of this is where the world is. All right. So, and again, we have to remember it's not like all this stuff wasn't happening. It was. Right. It's just it's becoming more visible for a reason. So this is where the rubber hits the road. Okay. This year is like a really critical point. So here are some, I think it's 5 tips I have, okay, in case it's helpful for those of you who like structure like me. Okay. So number 1, focus on yourself and releasing your distortion patterns. Okay? Like it seems kind of silly, but it's not because that's what you have control over. You have control over you and what it is that you choose to focus on and what it is that you choose to release. Okay? What it is that you do to internally strengthen, to raise your frequency resonance. Okay. Let me just tell you this very clearly. There will be a lot more gossip, fear mongering, blaming, false rumors, lies to cover up for abuse of power, oppression, greed at all levels, political, corporate, and even the spiritual world. Okay. It's going to happen everywhere. So, as a result, it can trigger a lot of anger at all the injustice. Okay. There's a lot of injustice in the world that's coming to light. Again, that's as a result of what? Abuse of power. Okay. So, the key is to allow that natural reaction of anger, okay, to have it. But once it flashes through, to transmute it into something constructive, like the resolve to focus within, to release what you have in yourself that is causing the distortion, the reactiveness. Because frankly, if there was no distortion, there would be no friction. And that causes you to be triggered in the first place. You would just, like, there would be no resistance. You'd just be like totally calm and neutral with everything, right? I'm not saying it's desirable. I'm just saying that that's what it would be. So you can use the energy of the flash of anger, or perhaps for some of you, it's longer than a flash. Okay, the indignation, the anger, the frustration, the rage, whatever it is that you experience, to push you into having the grit, the determination, and the conviction to stay in what can be uncomfortable, unpleasant, and unsettling so you can release those distortion patterns. A lot of people worry about other people and then try to control things to make things easier to release the suffering of those they love. But this is not about solving anything for everyone else, really. This is about continuing to focus on and refine yourself, letting yourself be an example for others, a higher resonance for a higher resonation rather, for others to and train to, if they're ready to be catalyzed and begin that shift themselves. So it's really important to be mindful of your own control patterns. Okay. And it can be totally, believe me, I understand that it can totally be out of a desire to help and because you love someone, and it's still control. Okay. So you got to be really mindful of this. Okay. And then watch why this control patterns are happening, your own fear patterns that they won't, I don't know, rise or be saved or whatever it is, okay, that you're afraid of. All right. So, number two. So, the next tip for how to prepare for the upcoming year. All right. You'll be best served by taking a higher level of personal accountability. Okay. So, some of you already do this, which is wonderful. And it's about like an incredible level of self-awareness and accountability. Okay, awareness is the first step, accountability is a step further, which is required to be willing and to actually do the work, to see your patterns, your emotions that are skewed out of control, where you try to spiritually bypass, where you don't really like yourself and therefore resist or, kind of pretend isn't there or ignore or cannot accept. So you can release those patterns and move into greater liberation and a greater sense of connection with being part of the oneness. Okay. So, for more about what that can look like, I'd suggest watching episode 173, which we released very recently, called Frequency Work Fundamentals Rebooted. Okay. So, Fiona and I discussed that. And then there's the upcoming episode, I think in a couple of weeks, which is episode 180, which is called Peekaboo, I See Me, which is all about higher level accountability. Okay. So if you're curious about that, keep your eyes peeled for it. As you guys know, it's free. It comes to you in your inboxes, or if you hit the subscribe button, you'll be notified as to when those episodes become available. Okay. So this is often a place where most people who are on an accelerated path can stumble, like hard, right? They fall, and I've seen this at all levels. It's remarkable how the ego mind can bite you in the ass, honest to God. Okay. They fall into the trap of the ego mind where they think that they're more awake or they have no ego or they're beyond the ego and they have no distortion or whatever it is. And they can feel superior to others because they feel like they're more awake, especially in contrast to others. Okay. This is all really just the little s self or the ego mind that needs to be addressed, that needs to be looked at, that needs to be worked on. And the ego mind is trying to convince you that you don't actually have much work to do. Because the more work you do, the less of a hold the ego mind has over you. So it's like a self preservation of the ego. Okay. So the ego mind is a super, super slippery sucker. Seriously, it's like the thing that can cause the downfall for most people on their path to awakening is the ego mind, the little s self. Okay, so you have to be really, really vigilant over it. Okay, tip number 3 of 5. Okay, to make the most of the dynamics of 2023, it would be good to drop into a further surrender to divine timing. okay, to life unfolding. So you can realize that all of these problems, this resistance, is friction that comes from the mind. Like honestly, the mind is such a slippery thing to overcome, okay? And which can be overcome when you have the perspective of the big S self. But you need the higher level perspective, or it's really hard to pull out of the perspective of the little S self, right? So it's not about avoiding the emotion or the hardship, but to have the inner strength and discipline to stay present. Okay, those of you in Living Your Brilliance have heard me say this. This is actually what we worked on, I think, in our last gathering, to stay present in the present moment of linear time with what is happening so that you can release the distortion and rise in your frequency resonance. Okay, it's very, very easy when we're uncomfortable to like distract or like peace out or like, just float out your body or whatever it is that you do. But really, it's about the discipline to stay with it. Okay, so this is really difficult to do with just your mind. I mean, just willpower and mind alone. I mean, honestly, no one really wants to do this. So meaning that you can't think your way there. This is truly a frequency resonance thing. So for more on what surrender is, I'd suggest watching episode 139, which is called Clarifying Surrender. Okay, so it's episode 139, Clarifying Surrender, again, found on this YouTube channel for those of you who are not familiar with this channel. Okay, so tip number four. Okay, we can use the apparent duality of this time to push us into what's being facilitated as a big jump into greater singularity. Okay, to singularity is really where we're going and so what is that? It's to experience ourselves not only as infinite indestructible consciousness embodied, but to have a greater and greater experience of oneness in embodiment. Okay, that's what singularity is, becoming more and more and more and more in the one. So while simultaneously experiencing your humanness, Chris adds, which is a good point. Okay. So this is actually the focus of where we're going in the Limitless Potential Mastermind, okay, which is my most transformative, intensive, advanced, and exclusive program, which happens to be open right now for registration, if that sounds like something interesting to you. And I believe registration for that closes January 2nd. I could be wrong, but I think that's right. And also, if you want to begin to transcend the illusion of duality, and if you haven't signed up yet for my special and what I feel like is going to be really awesome winter solstice event tomorrow night, which is called Transcending the Illusion of Duality, it's happening, I think, at 7 p.m. Pacific again. For those of you who want to know, you may want to consider that. So I've been feeling it in the field, and I'm excited about it because it's going to be a powerful one. Just like this new session for LPM, we're all moving into greater and greater and greater singularity, finally. So anyway, that's just another potential resource for you, and there's more information about it available on the website should you want it. All right. So number five, tip number five. All right, make sure to take time for yourself, for stillness, and to give yourself more self-care, however that best works for you. Okay. Whether you're aware of it or not, you're integrating a ton. Okay. The frequencies that we're moving into are very high in resonance. It's not a small thing to jump from one consciousness level to another. It really isn't. It sounds like, we can just say it like, oh, we're just going to jump from one consciousness level to the other. Well, it's actually significant and your body comes with you. So it's really important as you integrate higher and higher levels of frequency resonance to be able to nourish the body at this time. Right. So give yourself time for greater self care, whatever that looks like for you, time by yourself. Like, honestly, like, you need time by yourself to help you integrate, whether it's walks in the woods, eating well, whatever your thingy is, it doesn't really matter, but time, okay, for to nurture yourself. Right? So hopefully that gives you a sense of what may happen in 2023, and more importantly, how to make the best of whatever happens. Okay, to not only stay stable, but to learn, to grow, to strengthen, and just leverage it to make your life more and more awesome. And for many of you, as you do this, you will notice that your experience of life, okay, once you get past this little period of crunchiness, is going to be like almost magic seeming compared to like what most people are struggling with. And I'm not saying that because you're better than anyone. Honestly, it's just like, are you of a high enough frequency resonance to be able to experience a higher level order? Honestly, that's it. Okay. So it has nothing to do with worth and how good you are and how not good you are. Honestly, frequency resonance. That's it. Okay. So, and cultivating your frequency resonance or raising your frequency resonance can be done by the 5 things I mentioned just now. And one thing I forgot to mention, which is really key if you want to empower yourself to raise your own frequency resonance, is the Mastery and Momentum Refining the 6 Core Essentials program, which is so, so critical for you to have the tools yourself. Okay. Because really, we're moving into a higher level of self empowerment yourself to ascend yourself. Okay, this is really something that is important at this time. Okay, phew, that was a lot of talking. All righty. So I'm going to, oh, wait, I'm not doing it live. I'm going to answer questions. I forgot what we were doing for a second here in all my excitement. All righty. So if anybody has questions, I'm ready to answer a few of them before we go into the GFC, which will start to help you um, come further into your center. This is not an easy time, people. It isn't. Okay. It doesn't matter. I mean, some of you are doing okay. Okay. Some of you are feeling good. Some of you are like, yeah, I'm cruising. And some of you are like, whoa, a little bumpy here, a little bumpier than it's been in a long, long time. Okay. Whether it's physical symptomaticness or whatever the heck is going on. All right. It's a lot. So, in any case, uh, questions for, okay. So, Fiona has a question about below or whatever. Yeah. Do you have an indication if there will be large catalyzing solar flash anytime soon? I've had visions of this over the years. Yeah, the solar. Okay, so for anybody who is not aware of the solar flares, they have been going off actually quite intensively in the past year. They very much affect us. These solar flares come out, basically go right through the earth, and everybody, because you're embodied, is basically dealing with this very large pulse, whether you're aware of it or not. It can be very destabilizing to have experience a solar flare. It can cause physical things like tinnitus, like ringing in the ears. It can cause heart palpitations. It can feel to some people like they're having a panic attack, like physically, like heart racing, like increased breath, sweating. You know, like your body feels like it's going into flight. That type of thing. It can cause headaches. It can cause people to like lose consciousness a bit. It's like a thing. Okay. So solar flares are big. They have been happening. This year quite intensively. We had about 2 or 3 where I was just like, whoa, that was intense. So, to answer your question, John, yes, we will continue to have them. Yes, they are important. Yes, they are. What they are doing is they are helping, whether people are aware of it or not. It's like a huge reset. Like if you, for most people, it's just hard. For people who can um, modulate it, okay, which you can do, by the way. I've done this with, I don't know if I've done it with Living Brilliance. I feel like I have. I've definitely done it in Limitless Potential Mastermind, but you can basically program your light body to slow it down so that you can take in the slow flare in a way that's most optimal for your rendering, essentially. So they can be a big reset for people physically. They can be catalyzing. They can cause a purging in the physical. So they can be, I mean, disruptive, but they can also be forward moving. So are there going to be more solar flares? Yes. Yep. And also what's that thing you call the thing? The oh, good lord, I'm so bad with names. The Schumann resonance. Okay, I'm really bad with names, okay? So, I think that's what it's called. Um, that is the resonance of the earth. That is being, that will change, and that also disrupts how we feel in our physical bodies. We are of the earth, okay? Bottom line. That's it. That's what our bodies are from. The DNA of our bodies are from the earth. So, in any case, so when that resonance shifts, man, do we feel it, okay? And sometimes it's linked to the solar flares. So all those things happen. There are people who talk about the poles shifting, like flipping, like where the north and the south poles flip. I don't know that that needs to happen. I used to feel that more about 5 years ago. I haven't felt it so much lately. Doesn't mean it's not going to happen, but I just haven't felt it as much. So I feel like the field has changed in terms of the possibilities. Um, that's just my take on things. So that's hopefully, John, that answers your question. Okay. Okay. Um, will you be holding any retreats next year? Yes. We'll be holding retreats next year to support and to give momentum. A lot of people have been asking about this because usually what you guys have usually heard about something by now about what's happening in the spring, and things have been shifting at Spherical Luminosity. So we are giving. Oh, you're getting like first dibs. Okay, so we are giving a retreat that I'm really excited about, actually, and it's called the Awakening Map, navigating the mystery of the void in March, at the end of March. I think, oh, good Lord, I think it's like March 28th. Don't quote me on that, but it's like March 28th to April 1st, like right there in the last weekend. And it's going to be in Zihuatanejo in Mexico. And it's the reason I'm so excited about it is because the void is an extraordinarily important place, and it's very little discussed, and it's very little known, and it's everywhere. And it's, as many of you know who have done frequency work. And for those of you who are new, the void is the place of absolute dissolution, absolute nothingness, and also absolute potential. It's where all form comes from. Okay, it's all where it's birth. It's seated in its birth. Everything comes from the void. And to transition from levels of consciousness, or even sometimes levels of frequency resonance, okay, that's what the death space is. You have to pass through the void. You must. It's just required. When you go from life to death, you pass through the void, etc. So, but most people don't really know the void and don't understand it, are not aligned with it, et cetera, et cetera. And so we're going to really go into this space to navigate the mystery of the void and the power of it. And the reason we are doing this, just so you're aware, it's this moment of stillness. It's like, um, and in that stillness of the void, if you're most people, just so you know, come out of the void too fast because they don't know what it is and they're scared of it, and they don't, and it just seems like, whoa, this big expansive like nothingness with potential in it, but like what is it? But if you're in it and you're aligned with it, what can happen is when you come out of it, you seed a much higher potential, okay, in terms of frequency resonance. So it's super exciting, but you have to be aligned with it and know what it is and know how to navigate the void in order to do that. It's like the place, where artists, when they kind of like will be painting or whatever, and they have to stop for a bit, but it's not done yet, and they can't quite finish, and they don't know why, and then at some point after leaving it for a while, they'll come back and all of a sudden be flooded with inspiration. It's because it's that period of gestation that's important. Well, similarly, in the rise in consciousness, we need to traverse the void, the space between the inhale and the exhale, the stillness. Okay, so we're going to be giving that in at the end of March, which is super exciting, and then we will also. This is another, what do you call it? Like sneak peek, or I don't know what do you call it in advance? Preview. Another preview. Yeah, we're also going to be giving an ending emotional eating series. And it's my first collaboration with someone awesome who you guys have seen actually before on our last, or a couple of times ago, YouTube Live, Kristen Rowell, who's very knowledgeable, passionate, and highly resonant as well, who she's going to do the physical stuff and I'm going to do the frequency work stuff. So anyway, that is what is coming up. So thank you for asking the question, Fiona. All right. So, okay, how long these things spoke of last? Is there a time frame? Yeah. So it's my feeling is it's going to be pretty intense next year. And in 2024, this is when we're going to start to see a shift, is my feeling as things stand now, people. Okay. So before everyone's like, you told me that, come 2024, it's all going to shift. Okay. Before, okay, everyone gets all upset. So to make a prediction is kind of an interesting thing, right? Because it's about like reading the field of possibilities and what is probable. But that field is changing all the time. And that field is influenced by you, right? What we choose individually, how much we rise, affects the field. Whether you're aware of it or not, it's not really that important. It affects the field and what the possibilities are, not just for you and the people you love, but for humanity. That's why this work is so important, right? So raising your frequency resonance isn't just like a, gee, I'd like to feel better, which happens, by the way, but it's also about like what possibilities are available to humanity, like honestly, to experience consciousness, right? Rising, and the pickles we put ourselves in, quite frankly. So 2023 is going to be pretty dark. I'm not going to lie. It's going to be intense, right? This is when it's like the work is really important right now. And because the ripple effect of your work in a time that is intense is more, actually, it's amplified. Okay, so that's why it's so important. So, my feeling is it will start to shift in 2024 ish. Okay, like somewhere in there, like maybe late spring, early summer. But let's see what happens. All right, let's see what we choose. So, hopefully that answers your question. Anybody who tells you definitively that X is going to happen, it's very unlikely, okay? Because there's too many things that are moving and it's constantly fluid, constantly. Okay, there's nothing fixed, doesn't exist. Okay, is that it? Okay, one more. Hang on, we're looking for the other one. Okay, how do we deal with anxiety at this time? I keep getting pulled into anxiety about negative world events. Yeah, this is a thing that a lot of people are dealing with right now. It's really, really, really important to center yourself in the 0 point. Okay, so you're like, what? I asked her about anxiety. Why is she talking about the 0 point? Okay, if you don't know what the 0 point is, I really strongly recommend that you watch episode 151 of Mastering Your Wealthy Frequencies called The Foundation of the Reality, uh, Centering into the 0 point, or something like that. Okay. It's a very actually technical discussion and it's a bit long, but it's important because it's not easy actually. It's about how the reality and you function within that reality and what causes us to have experiences of um, suffering, fear, anxiety, worry, stress, or getting stuck. Okay, those are all time functions. So you may be like, what is she talking about time function when I'm asking her about anxiety? Because your anxiety has to do with how you're rendering or not in the zero and how far off the zero you are. And again, if you don't understand what I'm saying, because you might not, you might be new, and you're like, I don't understand how that's related, watch episode 151. If you'll understand more if you watch episode 151 and episode 97. Okay, 151, 97. That will explain to you how the illusion of the reality and how you are created and what causes anxiety, stress, worry. And also, you have to learn how to hold your space. So if you don't know what it means to hold your space, I definitely recommend the infamous episode. I think it's 121 or 122 called Steady She Goes, Hold Your Space. Okay, it's very clear there. It's like these are all longer discussions, like your question's an excellent one, but I mean that's like a 20-minute discussion and a 45-minute discussion, et cetera, et cetera. And it requires more nuance. But those are you will find there the answer to your question. So I'm going to give you a top level one, which is you have to learn to find yourself in the zero. When you anchor into the 0 point, which has to do with the 0 point of space and time, when you can bring your consciousness to this point and hold yourself stable here, what will happen is you get less and less triggered by what is happening around you. And when you are in your 0 point, you can better hold your space. So, holding your space means not allowing other people's negative emotions, stresses, anxieties, worries, etc., urgencies come into the sacred space that is you, which is basically within your spirit body, which is a sphere. Your spirit body is a sphere at arm's length all around you, all the way in. So, all the way in through you infinitely. Okay. Really, if anybody else is coming into this space with their whatever it is, or it's being allowed because your spirit body is porous, then you're going to constantly, constantly, constantly be at the mercy of other people their reactions, their fears, their anxieties, their stories, their agendas. And you will also find it difficult to feel centered and stable and like you have inner peace. So if you watch those 3 episodes, you'll start to understand the mechanics or the how all that works and why. And then you'll be like, oh, wait a minute. Now I kind of get it. And it's funny. As humans, we tend to make things a little bit more complicated than we need to. It's actually quite simple at spirit level. So once you watch those 3 episodes and you get it, because it's not that complicated, really. You'd be like, wow, I just have to focus on 3 things, or actually just one, which is the coming into your 0 point and, well, two, holding your space. Okay. So you can resolve more easily this anxiety that you're feeling by doing what I just mentioned. Okay. So hopefully that is helpful as a resource. Again, that would be episodes 151, episode 97, and episode 122. Steady She Goes, Holding Your Space. I think 97 is called Ancient Wisdom, like Ancient Wisdom Clarified, and yeah, the other one's Holding Your Space, and the other one's called the 0 point 0.1. Yeah, okay. So you can find it more easily. It's all free on this channel. Okay. So next question. This is the last question. What is the main theme to the solstice event? Oh, I love this question. So this question is about transcending the illusion of duality. So as humans, we have a very strong and very limited belief that the world is dual, right? Light, dark, happy, sad, I don't know, good, bad, abundant, scarce. Yes, that's like the world's extremes. That's how we frame the world. It's actually a false viewpoint. And it's because it's mired in the perspective of the little s self. And it is an illusion that is formed by your ego mind. So, part of the awakening process is to break through the illusion of duality and to come into a more and more solid, stable, centered experience of singularity of the one embodied, okay, in a human experience. And when you have that, you realize that the duality actually isn't really dual at all. Okay? It's just an illusion from your mind. And when that happens, you um, start to feel even more your own limitlessness, your own access to everythingness, that abundance that is available to all of us if we stopped having these ego mind perspectives and these distortions, all that sort of stuff. Time changes. Okay, in singularity, we get access to the eternal now, which is infinite. So there is no scarcity of time, etc. Okay, so the winter solstice. The reason I was called to have, I mean, I don't really think about these things; it just popped in. But the reason that's the theme for the winter solstice is because the solstice is typically a time where we bridge from one extreme to another, right? We go from the darkness into the light. That's how it's usually talked about. But really, it's a time of bridging. Okay. It's about being right between the two, okay, and recognizing everything is part of one. So that's why the solstice can be so powerful. And that is why that is the focus of the solstice event. We're using that frequency resonance that's already part of the solstice to help us to drop further into um, or be able to move beyond that duality. Um, and it's, yeah, so it's going, like I said, because the winter solstice, for those of you in the Northern Hemisphere, we're going into the darkest time of the year, into like opening into the light. And for the south part of the hemisphere, it's the opposite, right? So I don't know if I said that wrong, but anyway, you know what I all mean. Moving from one to another. That's the point of the solstice. All right. So hopefully, I sometimes say things opposite. So hopefully that made sense. All right. Cool. That was a lot of good questions. So we are now, thank you for them. Thank you for asking them. They're all really good. So we are now going to move into the group frequency calibration, right? The most important part of this YouTube live. And we are going to, in this time, come further and further into the zero. Centering yourself there sounds like simple, and you're like, and people are like, God, she keeps talking about the centering into the zero. It's like she's like keeps banging on about it. Exactly. It's like I said, things on spirit level are not that complex. These humans like all these bells and whistles and complications and like nuances. And honestly, it just comes down to a few very, very, very key things. That's why centering into the zero is part of the one of the six core essentials, okay, in mastering momentum. And in this time when it can be so hard because you are integrating a lot, whether or not you are aware of it, you also are in the field of a collective that is not centered, not stable, all over the freaking place, being like angry and like whipped up in their anger and fear. All right. I mean, being centered seems pretty damn good, no? Right? So, okay. All right. Here we go. Settling in, becoming aware of your body. And as you become aware of your body, noticing your back body, please. And for some of you who've been doing frequency work for a while, getting really specific, like the hairs on the back of your neck, the pores from which the hairs spring, like all these little details, the little bumps and ridges and curves of your spine, what your skin is touching, the spread of your skin. Just notice your back body. Mhm. Really nice. Bringing your attention to your heart space, please. Right in the center of your chest and your nipple line, all the way up to underneath your chin. Okay. So before we even raise our frequency resonance, okay, there's a lot of like residue around some of you, right? There's, like I said, it's not like affecting just us, it's affecting all of us. Now, how we're dealing with it has to do with how high your frequency resonance is, how aware you are, how many tools you have, all that sort of stuff. Yeah. So now that means that you're dealing with people who are heavier in the resonance and are just struggling. I mean, it sucks. And some of them try to come into your space because you're more stable than them. Okay. It's not necessarily malicious. It's just like, is there a life preserver? Okay, great. Let's hang on to that. All right. So pulling some of this residue off of you. There we go. Imagining, sensing, feeling, becoming aware of, or simply just knowing this residue dissolving, crumbling, disintegrating from around you and out of your field. Yep. Hmm. Good. Becoming aware, please, of the base of your groin and your heart space in the center of your chest and your nipple line. We're going to ask ourselves the question that we begin with often. And that question is, how can I become even more aware of my connection only to pure source? And that question is, again, how can I become even more aware of my connection only to pure source? Or whatever question works well for you to bring your frequency resonance higher. Holding your frequency resonance up. As many of you know, how high your frequency resonance is dictates absolutely everything from what your reality looks like, how you feel about it, how much abundance you experience, the speed of your spiritual awakening. Everything is determined by your frequency resonance. So, this is one of the most important things we do together. Good. Bring your attention now, please, to the inside of your left lower ribs, in addition to the intercostal muscle, muscles between the ribs. Okay? It's very thin, but it's there. Mhm. Okay. Oh, just a moment, please. So, when we perceive injustice in the world, okay, and there's a lot of it visible right now, like unbelievable amounts of it, okay, we can start to feel like we are being attacked. Okay, not necessarily like you have to like run away, but it kind of like chips away at our sense of well-being or centeredness. It can. Okay, so whether you're aware of this or not, or you feel like pretty good at holding your space, I'm going to clear this out of the this part of the rendering. That's you. Okay. So if you're feeling good, great. This will help you just hold your center even more. If you're having trouble with this and being affected by it, just in terms of how you feel, your frequency resonance, what you're thinking about, etc., clearing this out. Okay? Keeping your attention here, especially if this is a challenge for you. Mhm. And there's a small subgroup here where you have people trying to latch into you. Okay. So because your frequency resonance is higher, or you're bright, or your spirit body's porous, or any number of things. Okay. there's a lot of people who are unstable right now who are trying to find stability somewhere. Like I said, it can be intentional and not great, or it can just be like they're just looking for stability, right? And it's not personal, really. So whatever it is, we're going to release this. And for a couple of you, this includes the disembodied, right? So meaning the dead, that type of thing. Either way, not good. There we go. hmm Yep. Bring your attention, please, to the front of your throat, please. Yeah. So, like I mentioned, there are more and more people who are transitioning right now. Okay. So, meaning there are more and more people dying. And of course, it's natural that people die. And there's just a lot of transition happening now. And so it can be that some of the dead don't even know they're dead. Some of them are just confused. Some of them are afraid. Some of them don't know where they should be going. All right. So they can come into our field for any number of reasons. So I'm going to keep them at a better distance because some of you, man, you're bright enough. They get confused. They think they're going into source. They're not, but they think they are. So hang on a minute. hmm Yeah. So a question some of you have is, well, I mean, I don't even sense these dead people. How do I protect myself from them? First of all, you don't really need to protect yourself. It's more about keeping them out of your field so you don't feel their heaviness, their stagnation. You don't start to feel like sometimes people get symptomatic, like they get sick. Okay, because with the dead comes a frequency of decay. You need to be in your center more than ever. You need to hold your space. Okay, again, these are the six core essentials, but you see why it's so critical. Yeah, here we go. Good. Becoming aware, please, of the backside of your brain. Okay, so if you imagine your brain as if it were vertically divided, okay, front half, back half, and then all the way down the back of your neck, in your spine. hmm So what we're releasing here is fear. We can get very caught in fear. It's easy for us as humans, right? It's instinctive. So we're like herd animals. It's like you start to run even though you don't even know why the hell you're running. Right? Hang on a minute. So creating space between your fear or you and other people's fear. Okay. So that's the first thing. And secondly, creating space between your fear and you. Right? So I know it sounds strange. Well, how do I have distance from my own fear? You can. Okay, the more you come into the perspective of the higher self, the more you're like, okay, I'm afraid. I get why I'm afraid. You have your fear and it passes. Okay, you don't get like sucked into it in the same way. So call this anxiety or worry. It's all fear. Okay, just at different levels of intensity. There we go. Becoming aware, please, imagining, sensing, feeling, or just knowing your own brilliance from deep within starting to expand out through the very center of you, all the way out in all directions. There we go. Really lovely. Bring your attention now, please, to the base of your occiput and right behind your heart space on your spine. Okay, so this is the fear of loss. Okay, now the fear of loss is huge. It can include the fear of loss of your physical life, someone you love, money. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things we fear of loss around, like tons. And when we're experiencing fear of loss, it can be very heightened. We can be oversensitive to the fear of loss that others are having. And it can be really, really difficult to be in the zero. Because why? Because, well, you're spinning around in the fear of loss. So you have all these emotions and thoughts, and you're worried, and you're in the future time, and you're in the past, you're not in the present, in the moment of linear time, that is present moment linear time, centered in your body. Very difficult when we're in this fear. Good. Huge. Becoming aware of, imagining, sensing, feeling, or just knowing a very, very brilliant deep blue that expands in this space. Very good. Really lovely. Bringing your attention now, please, to your back ribs on the right side. Okay. So back ribs, right side on the inside. Okay. Meaning the side facing your organs. All right. And if you could also become aware of your right shoulder blade. Okay. Which is sort of like in there on, on top of the rib or in within the rib area, sort of. Okay. So however you perceive that is great. Just right. That's confusing for you. Just right side of the back. Just okay. So when we're in the space where things are harder, more challenging, crunchier, less optimal than we would like, we can lean in to try to like effort our way through it, right? We got to like pound through it, right? Just get it done. Okay. Yeah. In this space, it's more optimal. Okay. And ultimately will yield a better outcome if you surrender. And that probably will be like, duh, for some of you. Yep. Surrendering. Now, who are you surrendering to? Well, just your higher self and pure source. That's it. You at a much higher version, much higher order, much higher frequency resonance. And pure source. That's it. Nice. Softening into the space. The right back side of the body. Mm-hmm. Really good. Bring your attention now, please, to the midpoint of that solar plexus. And now anchoring us further into the 0 point. Yeah, really good. Nice. Bringing your attention, please, now to the xiphoid process, which is right at the base of your sternum. Your sternum is that big, thick bone in the center of your chest where your ribs meet in front of your body. So if you trace your sternum from the hole of your throat all the way down, where it goes from bone to flesh and gets a little sore when you press on it, that is your xiphoid process. So bring your attention just there for a moment and to the front of your throat. Hang on a minute. Man. So what I'm amplifying here is staying centered. Okay, so holding your center and at the same time allowing yourself to be fluid. Okay, I know that sounds contradictory, but it's like you hold your center and like the rest of you kind of can shift better. It's the best way I can describe it. Two things at the same time. That seem like opposites, but really are not. There we go. Excellent. Bringing your attention to that xiphoid process again, please, and about 3 inches or 7 centimeters directly beneath it, down towards the belly button, a straight line. Clearing out the pain body. As many of you know, this only takes a couple of seconds. Good. Whew, pain body's full. Clearing it all out. Good. It gives you a little bit more spaciousness. Everyone take a nice deep breath in. Hold it for a good second or two. And then release with some sound. Nice. Blinking your eyes open. Looking at something inanimate. All right, guys. Wishing you all a very, very happy holidays and an epic 2023. And we'll see you on our next YouTube Live in just a couple of weeks. Okay. Bye for now.